Ada had always been careful with her heart. She grew up believing that love was fragile, that it could be lost in a moment of mistake or carelessness. She met Daniel when they were teenagers, in the small town where everyone knew each other. His smile was quiet but steady, and his eyes carried a kindness that felt rare in a world so loud and impatient. He listened when she spoke of her dreams, when she ranted about school or family or friends. He never judged, he never pressured, he only offered patience and the kind of attention that made her feel seen and valued. For years, they were inseparable, walking to school together, sharing snacks from the market, laughing at silly jokes. Daniel loved Ada with a heart so open, so true, that it scared most people because it demanded nothing in return except her happiness. But Ada was cautious. She had seen too many hearts broken. She had watched love destroy friends, families, and neighbors. She had heard the stories of betrayal, the lies, the pain. And she was determined that her own heart would remain untouchable. So when Daniel finally gathered courage and confessed his love, she hesitated. She said she needed time. She said she wasn't ready. She said she didn't know what she wanted. And though he tried to understand, though he smiled and nodded and promised to wait, her words cut deeper than any rejection could. His patience did not falter, but inside his chest a small crack formed, a hollow that whispered of the hurt of loving someone who was not yet ready to love him back. Ada walked away from him that day, not because she didn't care, but because she was afraid of the intensity of her own feelings. She feared vulnerability and the possibility of losing herself in someone else's heart. She thought she was protecting herself, but in truth, she was walking away from the only person who had loved her completely and unconditionally. Daniel stayed where he was for a long moment, watching her retreating figure, his chest tight with longing and sorrow. He did not shout, he did not run, he only held the weight of her choice silently and with dignity and in faith. Quiet, he made a promise to himself that he would never stop caring for her, no matter how long it took or how far she went. He returned to his life, but every smile, every laugh, every achievement felt incomplete because Ada's absence lingered in every corner of his mind. In the days that followed, Ada tried to convince herself that she had made the right choice. She focused on school, her friends, her family. She told herself that love could wait for another day, that Daniel's affection would fade with time. She did not expect that her own heart would ache in ways she could not explain, that when she laughed, she sometimes caught herself thinking of his smile, that when she lay in bed at night she felt a hollow emptiness, as if a piece of her had been left behind in the quiet streets where Daniel had waited for her, and in the village people whispered about the boy who loved and the girl who left. They saw Daniel walking alone with quiet dignity. They saw Ada surrounded by friends, yet somehow lonely. They could sense the invisible threads that tied their hearts together across the silence and the distance, and though Ada tried to deny it, Daniel's love remained a constant, a shadow, a presence in her life that she could not escape and would not escape, because some hearts are too strong to ever let go, even when they are rejected, even when they are broken, even when they are left behind. Days turned into weeks, and Ada's life in the city felt fuller, yet emptier at the same time. She had chosen ambition and independence over Daniel's quiet love. She had convinced herself it was the right choice, that success and comfort would fill the void that leaving him had created. Yet every night when the lights dimmed and the apartment grew silent, she felt the weight of regret pressing into her chest. She remembered Daniel's gentle smile, the way he had waited patiently, the small gestures that had made her feel safe and valued. And suddenly all the money, all the freedom, all the excitement in her new life seemed meaningless without him. She tried to distract herself with work and friends, but memories kept returning. The sound of his voice in her head, the way he had once laughed when she teased him, the small hand he had offered so many times to steady her when life felt too heavy. She realized slowly, painfully, that she had underestimated the depth of the love she had walked away from in the village. Daniel continued to live quietly, though the pain of rejection lingered like a shadow over his heart. He helped his family, worked at the shop, and spent time with friends, yet in the quiet moments when he was alone, he would sit by the old mango tree where he had once shared secrets with Ada. He would remember the days they had laughed together, the moments he had hoped would last forever, and he would silently pray that one day she would understand the love she had left behind. He never let anger or bitterness take root, though the hurt was deep instead. He nurtured the hope that some hearts are worth waiting for, and that true love can endure. Even the heaviest betrayals, Ada's days in the city began to change her. She noticed that no success could replace connection, that laughter, that love felt hollow, that even the grandest apartment felt cold when no one truly cared for her heart. She thought of Daniel constantly, and with each passing day, the ache in her chest grew stronger. She cried silently at night, imagining him walking alone through the streets they had shared, imagining him looking at the places that had once held them together, and she wondered if he had moved on, if he had stopped loving her, if she had lost him forever. And yet, even in her fear and longing, she could not bring herself to reach out. The pride that had once guided her steps now trapped her. In guilt and shame, she realized that leaving him had not freed her heart, but had wounded it in ways she had not expected. Every achievement, every compliment, every success reminded her of what she had lost every evening she walked past the river in the city and imagined Daniel there, waiting for her as he had once waited for her in the village. Her chest ached with the knowledge that some love does not fade. Some hearts do not let go, some souls endure even in silence, and even when rejected. And Daniel's love remained steady, unwavering, patiently waiting for the day she would return to the only heart that had ever truly loved her. And when that day came, it would be the quiet reunion of two souls who had survived heartbreak longing, and the cruel test of choices made too soon. Da could no longer ignore the emptiness that gnawed at her soul. Even in the midst of luxury and friends, she felt hollow. Every laugh felt forced, every compliment felt empty. Every achievement reminded her of the boy she had left behind, she remembered. Daniel's patience, the way he had waited quietly for her without complaint, the small things he had done to make her feel loved and safe, and suddenly she understood the depth of what she had given up. The nights in her apartment were the hardest. She would sit by the window looking at the city lights and imagine him walking through the village paths alone, waiting for her, as he had always done. She felt tears she could not hold back streaming down her cheeks as she whispered his name in the dark. She remembered the mango tree where they had once laughed together, the river where they had shared dreams, and the dusty streets where he had held her hand and smiled at her, and she realized with a piercing ache that true love had never left him. Daniel's life had continued quietly, but full of longing. He had not moved on because some hearts cannot forget the ones they truly love. He continued his work, helping his family, speaking kindly to neighbors, teaching children in the school. Yet every step he took was accompanied by the quiet echo of her absence. Every day he walked past the places that had held them together and felt the weight of the years spent waiting. He had endured pain without resentment because he knew that love is patient, love is steady and true, and it survives even the deepest rejection. Ada's heart broke anew as she realized that she had underestimated what it meant to lose someone who loved her completely. She had chased wealth and ambition, but they could not fill the space left by his absence. She cried silently, imagining his lonely walks, imagining the way he had held himself steady through heartbreak. She longed to turn back time to undo the choices she had made, yet pride and fear kept her silent. She did not know if he would forgive her, if he still loved her, if she was worthy of the patience he had shown. She wandered the streets of the city, imagining the village she had left, imagining Daniel waiting for her, imagining the small gestures that had meant more to her than anything money could buy, and she felt a mix of sorrow and desperation in her chest. She began to understand that some love is not measured in days or years, but in constancy and endurance, and the quiet promise to never give up on a heart that belongs to you. Daniel continued to hope in silence. Even as years passed, he remained steadfast. Because some souls are meant for each other, some hearts are too strong to be broken by absence or pride. And Ada realized with a painful clarity that she had been blind to the greatest treasure of her life. She had rejected love, thinking she could find happiness elsewhere, but happiness had always been waiting. Quietly in the patient, unwavering heart of Daniel, the ache in her chest was unbearable, and yet it was also a guide, a signal that love had never left, and that one day she might return to the boy who had waited for her all this time, and when she did, it would not be wealth or ambition that would welcome her back, but the enduring, unbreakable love of the boy who had never stopped believing in her. Ada could no longer hide from the truth of her heart. The emptiness she had carried in the city became unbearable every day. She realized that no amount of money, no flashy lifestyle, no admiration from strangers could replace the boy who had loved her quietly, faithfully, endlessly. She thought of Daniel constantly, the small gestures, the gentle patience, the way he had always been there, without asking for anything in return. She began to understand the weight of her rejection and the depth of the love she had left behind. Her pride and fear slowly gave way to regret and sorrow. She remembered the dusty streets of the village, the mango tree, where they had shared secrets, the river where they had laughed for hours, and tears filled her eyes as she realized that true happiness had always been tied to the heart. She had abandoned. She started to write letters she never sent. She called friends from the village to ask about him, hoping to hear that he was well, but fearing that he might have moved on. Each day she felt the ache grow stronger until she could no longer pretend that her choices had brought her peace. In the village, Daniel continued his life quietly. Though his heart ached for her every day, he worked with his family, helped the neighbors, and spent time with the children, teaching them small lessons about kindness and patience. Yet he never stopped thinking of Ada every step of every day he walked past the mango tree where they had once played, and sometimes closed his eyes, imagining her returning to him, imagining the moment when he could finally hold her again. He never complained, never demanded. He simply loved and waited because he knew some hearts are worth enduring pain for, and some love is worth every tear and every lonely night. One evening, Ada finally returned to the village. She stepped onto the dusty street with trembling hands, her chest heavy with fear and longing. She saw Daniel waiting quietly near the mango tree. He looked older, perhaps a little worn by life, but his eyes still held the same patient, unwavering love that had waited for her all these years. She froze for a moment, unsure if he would still care, if his heart had hardened, or if he would turn away, but Daniel smiled softly and took a small step toward her, offering his hand, a gesture that carried the weight of years of waiting and enduring. She grasped it immediately, and tears poured down her face as all the guilt, sorrow, and longing she had carried for so long escaped in a flood of emotion. He held her gently and whispered that he had never stopped loving her. And in that simple moment, all the years of separation, the mistakes, the rejection, the pain melted away in the warmth of a love that had endured everything. She realized finally that true love is patient, true love forgives. True love waits even through the hardest storms and darkest nights, and as they stood there hand in hand, tears mixing with laughter, she understood that she had returned not to wealth, not to status, not to ambition, but to the one thing that had always mattered, the boy who had loved her truly, deeply, unconditionally, and had waited for her faithfully until she was finally ready to come home. Even after Ada returned, Daniel's love did not erase the years of pain and longing immediately. There were moments of silence when they sat together by the river, moments heavy with unspoken memories of rejection, of longing, of all the tears that had been shed in absence. Ada sometimes cried quietly into Daniel's chest, unable to speak, feeling the weight of her mistakes pressing down on her. She remembered every lonely night in the city, every hollow smile, every moment she had tried to replace him with wealth and ambition, and her chest ached with the truth that nothing could have ever replaced the quiet strength of his love. Daniel held her without judgment, without frustration, simply allowing her to release the sorrow she had carried for so long. He whispered that he had waited, that he had always believed she would return, and that nothing could break the bond they had formed years ago, yet she had rejected. He showed her patience not as a favor, but as a natural expression of the heart that had never stopped loving her. Ada realized that love is not measured by time apart or mistakes made, but by endurance, forgiveness, and the willingness to remain when everything else has left her. Guilt was heavy, but Daniel never let it crush her. He reminded her through his small gestures, through his quiet presence, through the way he looked at her with unwavering devotion, that she was home now and that their love could heal if she allowed it. She began to help him with small tasks in the village, Learning again the rhythm of life she had once abandoned, she shared laughter with children and neighbors, rebuilt connections, and in doing so, she slowly rebuilt herself. She realized that true love is not about perfection or immediate happiness, but about standing together through the hard moments and embracing the scars that time leaves. The village watched quietly as Ada and Daniel walked together, hand in hand, their tears mixing with laughter, their hearts slowly learning to trust one another again. Even the old mango tree seemed to lean toward them, bearing witness to a love that had survived abandonment and regret. Their bond deepened as they spoke honestly of the years apart, of the loneliness, of the mistakes made, and of the hopes that remained dormant yet unbroken. They cried together, sometimes laughed, sometimes sat in silence, feeling the weight of everything that had passed and the relief that they were finally together. Ada finally understood that happiness is not in riches or grandeur, but in a love that waits, endures, and forgives. She saw Daniel not as a boy she had left, but as the man whose heart had held space for her even when she had walked away and even when she had been blind to what mattered. The night settled over the village, and they walked home slowly, hearts heavy with emotion, yet lightened by reunion. Tears flowed freely, words were whispered, and in the quiet darkness Ada felt a sense of peace she had never known in the city. A sense that they had survived the storm of rejection, the pain of absence, and the cruelty of pride, and now were ready to build a life rooted in trust, patience, and enduring love. Ada and Daniel had finally found each other again. Yet the journey to healing was not instant. Every morning they woke to the soft sun spilling over the village, to the quiet songs of children in the distance, to the smells of bread baking and rivers flowing. And each small moment reminded them of the love that had endured every test. The weight of the past was still there, but it no longer crushed them. They held hands through the market, shared laughter over small chores, and at night sat together under the stars, speaking softly of the years they had lost, the regrets they carried, and the hope for the future. Ada often cried into Daniel's shoulder, releasing years of guilt, sorrow, and longing while he held her with patience, whispering that love forgives, that waiting is never wasted when hearts are true. She realized that happiness had never been in the city, in wealth or ambition. It had always been in the steady presence of someone who never let go, in the quiet gestures, the patient waiting, the unwavering heart that belonged to her, even when she had turned away. Daniel had shown her that true love is. It's not about perfection or immediate joy, but about enduring pain, forgiving mistakes, and remaining when everything else is past. He never demanded she be flawless. He never complained about her absence. He only loved her fully and without hesitation, and Ada learned to trust again, to be vulnerable again, to give her heart without fear. She helped in the village, laughed with neighbors, played with children, and slowly felt herself become whole again. Her tears became softer, her smiles more genuine, and each day she felt the quiet strength of a love that had survived rejection, and waiting. Their bond grew stronger. With every small moment, the mango tree, where they had shared childhood, secrets became a place of laughter again. The river, a witness to the enduring love that had once been broken but never destroyed. They spoke often of the past, the mistakes, and the lessons learned. And in these conversations, they found healing, understanding, and deeper intimacy. The village watched quietly, sensing the power of a love that had waited, endured, and finally reunited. Ada understood at last that true wealth was never in gold or success, but in a heart that waits and forgives, in a love that survives absence and pride, in a connection so strong that nothing can sever it. The night fell, and they walked home together hand in hand, tears still falling freely, laughter mingling with quiet sobs. Hearts finally at peace with the past and certain of the future. Daniel kissed her forehead softly and whispered that they were home, that nothing could take this love away again. Ada rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth, safety, and unwavering devotion that had always belonged to her. The love she had once rejected but now embraced fully. The stars shone above as the village slept, and in that quiet their hearts spoke without words, promising patience, forgiveness, an unending devotion. They had survived rejection, longing, guilt, and pride, and now their love was stronger than ever, rooted in endurance, trust, and the knowledge that true hearts never let go, even after years apart.